a truly innovative action camera. This is everything you need to know about the Insta360 Go Free and Action Pod. Okay, so basically the Insta360 Go Free is an action camera and one of the lightest ones at that. This camera weighs just 35 grams and can fit well in the palm of your hand. It has a very sleek and clean design and it's nothing too difficult to use, requiring only a simple press of the button for its most basic use. Now, the sleek and small design of this camera means that you're able to get incredibly creative with the placement of this camera, enabling you to shoot shots that you never could before. Okay, so let's break down the most important thing about this camera, its resolution. This camera can shoot at 2.7K at 30p at its highest performance. It is an ultra-wide frame which enables you to capture everything in front of you, so you don't have to be worried about anything disappearing off into the peripherals. It's a very wide shot, which not only does it enable you to capture a lot more, it also gives you a lot more options in post to crop in. Although one thing to note that as this is an ultra-wide lens, it is going to distort your face a bit if it's held too close to your face. So my recommendation when using this camera is reserve it for wide shots or mid shots such as this one. You have 3 modes of stabilisation which are built for all different activities. So if it's just a casual walk, you can set it at 1, but if you're say more erratic, like say on a footy field, you can set it all the way up to 3. Now the standard stabilisation will remove a lot of your bumps, shakes and rolls, but you also have a much stronger stabilisation called flow state stabilisation. Now for those of you that want to use flow state stabilisation, do keep in mind that this is being reserved to free frame video mode. Now what makes this camera so fantastic for mounting is it has a magnet base on the back. It's an N52 magnet mount, which means you have incredibly strong grip on anything that this magnet attaches to. You really do actually have to give this camera a proper pull when removing it from any metal surface. It is very firmly on there. So you don't have to worry about if you say you're running around or there's a lot of shaking, that this camera is going to shake off whatever it's magnetized to. It is a very strong magnet. In addition to the magnetized base in this camera, you also have a number of accessories included with the product that ensure that you can mount this camera in almost any situation. For starters, you have a very basic rubber mount which can sort of just slightly elevate the camera a bit, but you also have a cap mount where you attach it to your cap and simply slap it onto your forehead, so that way you have a camera that effectively acts as a point of view camera. You also get this little necklace here where if you tuck it underneath your shirt here, you're able to magnetize the camera to your shirt. Now you can get additional accessories that work with the magnetic base on this camera, but what's included in the box and basically any metal surface you can find does give you plenty of options in terms of your creativity. Now this camera is very much designed towards hands-free operation, so for that reason it also has voice control. Now provided your camera is set to voice control, it enables you to issue a number of commands to operate this camera hands-free. I'm actually going to showcase that right now actually, so here we go. Start recording. So as you can see, I've spoken, told it to start recording, and well, it started recording. And if I simply wanted to stop recording, I say stop recording. And it's as simple as that. Now I did actually test out the voice commands at different distances in order to figure out how far away I can issue commands from, and I did find that at 60 centimeters was the optimal distance. Any further than that and I'm practically screaming at the camera to work. In terms of audio quality, this camera records at a sample rate of 48 kHz and a bit depth of 24. It has wind reduction and 2 directional microphones, one on the front and one on the back. So a significant upgrade from the Go 2 is the Go 3 has a 50% longer lasting battery. This means that with the Go 2 you could only shoot up to 20 minutes before it died, but with the Go 3 you can shoot up to 40 minutes plus. This makes this camera a lot more viable in terms of being an action camera, as you can take it out and shoot that much more content. But if you put the Go 3 in the action pod here, your camera can now last up to 173 minutes. That just makes this action camera that more viable for your vlogging and content creation needs. Now the Go 3 takes up to 35 minutes to fully charge, and the Action Pod takes up to 65 minutes to fully charge. It would have been an action camera if this camera wasn't waterproof. And fortunately, the Go 3 is waterproof at up to 16 feet deep, meaning that if you drop this into water or accidentally drop it into water, or want to take this for say surfing or just anywhere where you're surrounded by a lot of water, you can and not have to worry about this camera breaking on you. Although I will note that if you plan to do any underwater activity with this camera, make sure you keep the detachable lens hood on this camera. So now let's talk about the Action Pod. Well, for starters, the Action Pod has its own flip screen. Now the benefit of this obviously is that you don't have a screen on the Go 3 to actually view what you're capturing, so you can't be sure of what you're seeing. But with this flip screen here, you can flip it up and be absolutely sure of the framing on any shot done with the Go 3. Through the screen on the Action Pod, a few simple swipes and you can access a number of important features and setups in a matter of seconds. Now I did notice when scrolling through the settings that the camera can be a little loud with all its bleeping and blooping, but fortunately though you can go into the settings and flick this to mute. I will note though that you don't necessarily need the Action Pod in order to remotely view or adjust the settings on the Go 3. You can also download the Insta360 app and connect to your camera via Bluetooth. On the side here you'll also find a Q button. This is your quick setup button. Pressing this will open you up to a number of quick setups for your camera to set it to the necessary camera settings for optimal shooting. Now for those of you that still want to have the option of actually attaching this camera to your head or to your chest or wherever else you might think of, you do still have that option when you're utilizing the Action Pod. Because fortunately with the Action Pod, you do still have remote viewing. This means that the camera can shoot in one spot and you can preview it on your screen in another spot. It should also be noted that you can still make a number of adjustments and settings to the camera remotely. I did test out the length of the remote shooting on the Go 3 and I did find that it sort of started to disappear at around the 15-meter mark. Now you can still use the Insta360 app to operate this camera remotely and adjust any settings, but the advantage of using an Action Pod is it does free up your phone's Bluetooth to do other functions, so you're not necessarily draining your phone while using this camera. Now the Go 3 isn't the only phone with a magnetic base. The Action Pod itself also has a magnetic base. Now this is a lot more ideal, as once you place your camera into the Action Pod here, your camera is upright as opposed to flat looking directly up. So you can do a few other cool things with this camera, such as attach it to the hood of your car and drive around with it. Now let's also talk about the water resistance of the Action Pod. Now while the Go 3 can operate at 14 feet deep submerged in water, the Action Pod cannot, so do not drop this thing in water as you will break it. But with that being said, this Action Pod here does have an IPX rating of 4, which means that you can operate this camera with wet hands or on a rainy day. Just be sure to dry it off afterwards. If you do plan to use the Action Pod in wetter conditions, be sure to have the Go 3 camera plugged directly in, as the IPX4 rating does not apply when the camera is not in the Action Pod. Let's show off a number of the other modes of this camera. For starters, you have slow mode, which shoots at 1080p at 9:16 aspect ratio. It also records at 120 frames per second. This action camera isn't just a video camera, it's also a great photo camera for your casual photographer. The quality of the photos in this camera is QHD, which is quad high definition. This is good for your more smaller content such as phone content. Now what really helps the quality of the photos in this camera is two features in particular. You have HDR and Pure Shot. Now HDR, high dynamic range, ensures that a number of shots are taken of the same photo and combined, ensuring that you have detail not lost in your shadows and your highlight. HDR is just one of many modes that you can find in this camera. In addition to HDR, you also have Pure Shot. Now what Pure Shot is it's a form of AI that effectively processes the photo beforehand, ensuring that it brings out a lot more of the colors in the image and reduces the noise, giving you a much more prettier shot in the final result. A mode that you also have access to in this camera is free frame video mode. Now, as mentioned earlier in the video, free frame video mode enables flow state stabilization in the camera, but it also enables something else, which is if you say want to shoot in portrait or landscape, you don't have to decide in the moment if you want to shoot that way. So that's the Insta360 Go Free. Let me know if you're interested in this camera and what sort of stuff you would shoot with it. What's some creative ways to really utilize this camera in your content creation?